We're following a breaking update on Capitol Hill, where Senate Majority Leader John Thune just announced the next steps for President Trump's push for election reform.
Next week, I will be bringing the Save America Act to the floor, and we will be having a full and robust debate.
This legislation would be a complete overhaul on America's voting systems. An overhaul voting rights groups slam as new unnecessary hurdles on everyday Americans. Let's bring in MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell and Hofstra University law professor James Sample. Michael, this bill is unlikely to pass the Senate, at least as of this moment. Trump has said he will hold all legislation until the Save America Act is passed. So where does that leave us?
Yeah, well, Anna, as you just mentioned, the breaking news from John Thune this morning that the Save America Act is going to be on the floor of the Senate next week for debate. It's a significant development because both President Trump and Senate Republicans have been clamoring to consider this piece of legislation. They say it is central to their chances of winning the midterms and something that they want to get done ASAP. But the thing is the circumstances haven't changed, even though Thune's bringing it to the floor. This still does not have a pathway to passage. We know that Democrats are very ardently against it. The bill will need at least 60 votes to pass. There are certainly not enough Democrats to get on board and support it. You would need at least 7. The votes just simply aren't there. Then the second conversation that comes into play is the filibuster. We've heard from President Trump and a number of conservative Senate Republicans who say they want to change filibuster rules to essentially allow another pathway for this bill to potentially get through. It would, instead of having a 60-vote threshold vote, it would require Democrats to hold the Senate floor for hours, days, weeks to prevent passage of this piece of legislation. Not enough Senate Republicans have gotten on board with changing those rules, which means we are still in this standstill in terms of the possibility of the Save America Act becoming law. But nonetheless, Thune saying it's going to be on the floor next week. A positive development for Senate Republicans, but certainly not enough and not exactly fully what they're looking for.
And I think it's important to remind all of us what the Save America Act would actually do. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so there are 2 central tenets here to this piece of legislation. First off, it would require voter ID. Now, there are some states across the country that have voter ID laws, but not nationally. It's not something for all 50 states. This bill would require it across the country. The second part of it is it would require proof of citizenship to vote. Think you need like a passport or a birth certificate in order to register to vote. Now, Democrats have said that they are concerned that these 2 parts, these 2 tenets, could make it more difficult for individuals to register to vote. For example, not everybody may have a passport and not everybody may have a hold of their original birth certificate. There's also concerns that for women, it could be more difficult for them to get to a ballot box if their married name is not on that official documentation. That's why, part of the reason why we've seen Democrats say they're very clearly not in favor of this bill. But I was just at the Republican retreat over the past few days where I was hearing from a number of Republicans, and we heard from President Trump there himself saying that this is their main priority. This is what they want passed legislatively in the final months of the midterm elections. Again, Leader Thune is going to put it on the floor and try to find a pathway. But because of the opposition from Democrats and the Senate rules that anything that passes really needs to be bipartisan, it doesn't have a pathway to passage right now.
So, James, break this down for us. Does America have a problem with non-citizens voting in elections?
Statistically, the answer to that question is unequivocal and clear. No. The Save America Act purports to solve a problem that we do not have. Non-citizen voting is beyond vanishingly rare. It is statistically almost 0. And state after state, audit after audit, including the Trump administration's own data, bear that out, which is to say that this act, the sleight of hand here is to take the 2 parts that Michael referenced. Voter ID is the part they market. The proof of citizenship is the part that would have the impact, absolutely draconian impact. 21 million individuals lack ready access to the documents that would be necessary. 146 million American citizens do not have passports. And 69 million women in America have a married name that does not match the name on their birth certificate. So they have to go through yet additional steps to get certificates of marriage, many times in states where they no longer live. And then the election officials on the other end have to verify whether those documents are real. This is not a voter ID bill. Voter ID polls well, which is why that's what they emphasize. This is a re-registration and show your papers bill that is designed to produce chaos. The chaos is an end in itself because that end, in turn, becomes a means for the executive to assert control if the election outcomes are not to their liking.
I mean, as you point out, this isn't just a change in a document requirement. This changes how people register to vote, right? It changes how people participate in America's democracy.
Only 5% of the people who registered to vote in 2024 did so in person, Anna. 5%. This would require in-person voter registration for almost every American, and it would require in-person re-registration anytime a voter wanted to update a change of address or any of a number of other things. This is designed to overwhelm state election officials. This is designed to disenfranchise, and this is designed to create the kind of, well, look, there were all sorts of problems that becomes a justification, becomes a predicate for aggressive, unilateral, imperial action.
Why do you think Republicans are willing to go along with this, Republican lawmakers?
I think that they look at this as an opportunity to shift the conversation from a number of fronts where the topics of discussion are not favorable. It's a way to shift the discussion from Iran, from the Epstein files, from Minneapolis and ICE overreach to what they perceive to be one of their strengths. It's no longer the strength that it was, but a focus on undocumented immigrants. Americans believe incorrectly that non-citizen voting is a serious problem. And voter ID polls very well, 80% in many instances. This gives them a chance to shift to what they perceive to be politically favorable ground, and it gives them a chance to create that chaos that we referenced.
Are there any election reforms that you think would be useful?
Of course. Without it, I mean, we have essentially 50 election systems in the country in each of the different states. And in fact, we have more than that because each locality within each state has different systems. We need to do elections better, and we should have a serious conversation about how to do that. But an ultimatum from a president with a track record of contesting free and fair elections, saying he won't sign any legislation on any other American priority, no health care, no infrastructure, you name it, because he wants to hold the legislative process hostage in order to get this done, speaks to ulterior motives.